and start with the very important topic of El Nino. El Nino is this weather phenomenon that happens in the tropical Pacific. It is something that affects us periodically, and not just affects us, but it affects the globe's atmosphere, and it changes everything across the world. So with that said, now let's leave the Weather Center and head to our big board and show you exactly what El Nino is doing. Well, right now, the conditions are being observed. And as we look at it, those sea surface temperatures are above average, and that's one of the factors across the central and eastern Pacific Ocean. And you'll notice, according to NOAA, there's a 95% chance that this forecast is going to hold right through the winter of 2024. Well, first and foremost, let's show you what this is. El Nino, what is it? Well, it's the warming of this area from South America all the way around the globe to Australia. It's weaker trade winds that allow the sea surface temperatures to warm, and because this whole atmosphere changes down here, that's what actually reconfigures some of the things, the global atmosphere across the world. Specifically then, what are we talking about? Let me show you the normal conditions that go on. It has a lot to do with the Walker circulation. In other words, the atmosphere just above the sea surface itself. Now you'll notice the regular conditions here with thunderstorms out to the western Pacific, the thermocline, which is actually the nutrient-rich waters, and a lot of these conditions all change. So it is a differentiation of the global weather pattern. I mentioned the Walker circulation. Storms move from the western Pacific out to the central Pacific. That also means this weaker trade wind that happens changes this thermocline, this nutrient-rich water. So because of that, there's not only an atmospheric change, but also an aquatic one. The animals that live across and into all of that ocean area sometimes go lacking of food because of the change in the temperatures, the nutrient-rich waters, the colder waters. There's a weaker upwelling. In other words, the pushing of some of that colder water that comes to the surface. So it's a change in all of this across that area. So because of that change, there's a lot of different things that happen. One of the biggest ones that affects us at this time of the year is the fact that there is more wind shear. So it gives us less hurricane activity. Not to say there wouldn't be any, as we've already experienced, but it does have a tendency to lessen the effects, whereas it's quite the opposite for the Pacific and across the Pacific Ocean, and for folks who are, let's say, in Hawaii, affected by tropical conditions. Now, the global effects. The weather patterns change, and so as a result, there can be some devastating effects across the globe. First and foremost, this was named, this El Nino, down in Peru, the child, because all of the pattern changed down there. A lot of thunderstorms brewed, flooding happened. There was problem with fisheries all across that area. We'll talk about the flooding for the United States in a minute. As we flip the globe, though, out by Indonesia and by Australia, we're talking about drought conditions, and that dryness of the country of Australia often causes a number of very devastating fires. And as for Africa, Eastern Africa often experiences a lot of flooding, and down across South Africa, there's unusual drought that goes on. What about the United States then? For us, when it comes to the temperatures, the northern tier of states generally are warmer than normal, and that includes the tri-state. We generally see warmer conditions across our area, and that generally means less snow. What we end up having is maybe periods of snow that drop, and then we go on a little bit of a shortage for the entire season. As for folks across the southern tier, it's cooler than normal. Now, while it's cooler than normal, the most, well, devastating effects when it comes to precipitation is across the southern tier of the United States. You may remember El Nino causes horrific flooding mudslides across California, and that flooding often continues all across even the middle of the United States, stretching out to the southeast. And then we get drier than normal conditions across much of the northern tier of the United States, and that includes the Midwest and specifically for Cincinnati. So that's the overview. What about the actual timing? How long will it last? Well, this graph shows that very thing. The red bars, El Nino. Neutral conditions, meaning things are average, normal, everything's fine. Here's the percentage. You'll see 100% at the top, and these are the months. So for November, December, January, February, it's at 100% that we believe El Nino conditions are going to be persisting across the tropical Pacific. Then it only drops off a few percentages down to about 98. Then we continue to see a drop, and you'll also notice that the white bar, meaning the neutral conditions, begin to grow. So as a result, as we move into the spring, it still looks like we could very well see that warming of the tropical Pacific, and then we start to see it waning as we start moving toward the summer months. So to wrap it up, what does this all mean? Let's look back at a little bit of history. You'll notice there's been at least 30 El Nino events since 1900. I say that, but there's some conflict between experts to say exactly what perfectly designs El Nino, but most folks agree there's been about 30. These are the strongest events. You'll notice 82, 97, and as recently as 2014. This is a phenomenon that generally happens anywhere from 3 to about 7 years about the area and about a timeline of that. So we're back around to be talking about it. 82, of course, is the worst, considered the worst year of all time. Now, you'll notice as we head into our 2023, that's the whole thing. Will we be seeing, of course, not just an El Nino? That seems to be a given already. But as we look at it, we're talking about just how strong our 2023 El Nino will be. The bottom line to the forecast then is, as we head through the next few months, we're going to have to see exactly what the global conditions do, and most likely, especially during the winter months, since the forecast is so strong, we are at least initially going to see some of those devastating effects across the globe and most likely across the United States. This is not the kind of forecast that all of a sudden changes and bends and breaks and it's a bust. That's not the way this happens because of the expanse of the tropical Pacific Ocean. So there you have a look at what El Nino is, how it affects the globe, and exactly what will be happening for the tri-state. And that means folks who make a living from snow plowing to enjoying the snow may have a different look at this next winter across the tri-state. With that said, thanks very much for joining us. We're going to do this periodically across all of our platforms as we see the opportunity to do it. I'm Chief Meteorologist Steve Raleigh, and we will see you later tonight at 11 o'clock.